Hello, everybody, and welcome to Catalyst of Change. I'm your host, Alexia Cito, and I am so excited to be here in New York.
Welcome, welcome.
Thank you.
The City of Lights.
Yes.
Well, that's Paris, I think, but we are also the City of Lights.
Yeah, I just took it. I was like, yes, and the city that never sleeps.
Ever.
Oh, my goodness. So with our very special esteemed guest, Karolina, and I am so excited that you're here with us today. You are such an extraordinary person. From the moment I met you, you were speaking on a panel, and I just thought, wow, what a powerhouse. So we're going to be diving into Divorce Dynasty, your organization, all of the incredible philanthropic work that you do, and you are an absolutely exceptional lawyer. You have completely built your whole, career in such a powerful way through your journey and your story. And, you're a partner in a law firm. You have this amazing journey that's led you to be where you are today and are just getting started. And there's so much that you're doing in the world to make a difference, especially in the lives of women and children. And that's something that is so close to my heart. And I know the hearts of a lot of our listeners and viewers. So I want to welcome you and say thank you so much for joining. You are a catalyst of change.
I am so grateful to be here. For meeting you in London last fall and having a chance to speak with you. I think it was at the beautiful Peninsula Hotel for just a few minutes with Justina and her foundation and the work that we did in London. It said to me that we are definitely going to do some work together in the future, planted a seed. Your energy is contagious. Your mission is admirable. And it's just great to be here. As I drove to the city today, it made me realize how lucky we are to be in New York City, to be in London. I do a lot of work in Poland and Eastern Europe. How lucky we are to have the ability to touch so many lives across the globe with a mission to make women's lives better. Yeah.
And I would love to start there because we're actually here in New York because the United Nations Committee on the Status of Women.
Yeah.
And this may seem like such a silly question or something that's so obvious, especially for those that work in this space. But what makes it so important to do this, to focus on women?
We're in 2025, and for the mission of the UN to once again be the barriers that women are dealing with globally, and for those barriers to be similar to what they were even a decade ago, makes me realize, as an attorney representing women going through divorce and domestic violence and other trauma, is that we still have so much work to do. And it makes me question, why are we still here? Why are girls around the world, as Justina Muley has said so many times, still getting the fundamental denials of their basic rights? What is still going on here, right? So it's easy for us to sit in New York and complain, and we're not, but we still have so much work to do here. But think about what's going on in other parts of the world. And I believe that for the women that have gone through journeys, and my journey certainly hasn't been an easy one, your journey and the other people you're going to interview, we have an obligation to speak to these issues, but then to give solutions. I'm a person that says, this is what we will do. This is what I offer on Monday, on Friday, next Tuesday. I will help in this particular way. I'm a very consequential person. And I believe that the UN this year and the conversations are more focused on how will we not be here next year talking about the same obstacles?
Yes.
When are we going to be able to say that the basic of rights for women across the globe have been met?
And so with Divorce Dynasty, how is it that you are meeting some of those needs? And what exactly, inspired you to do that?
So I am an immigrant from Poland. I was 7 years old when my mother and I boarded that flight from Pan Am. It was a day that Princess Diana was getting married to Prince Charles. And my mother said to me, and English is my second language, by the way, so think of what I've gone through and the credit to my mom, who I hope will be watching this sometime soon, of what she did for me to give me the American dream. I remember her saying to me on the plane, that woman is going to be a princess, but you can be president. Now, she didn't know that you have to be born in the U.S. to be a president, but she said to me, you will accomplish, you can accomplish whatever you set your mind to. And my life has really been a fairy tale. I came to this country. My mother came from nothing to building a conglomerate of a business. My brother's a doctor. It's just incredible what she's done. I married an up-and-coming senator. I became this wife of someone that I'm so proud of. And I really thought I was heading to the White House with my then husband. But what my mother taught me is that when life drops the shoe, when Cinderella's shoe drops, you turn it into lemonade, right? So I was faced with my own divorce. My senator husband and I are no longer married. And I had a choice, right? To either sit in the corner and cry and say, oh my God, how could this have happened to me? Or kick ass. So I went to law school and I became a partner at a law firm. And I saw women coming in through the door crying, broken, lost. And I said to myself, how can that be? They're married to these incredible men. They have these incredible lives. What's the disconnect between women feeling their worth and seeing a vision for their future? And at the time, I was already working with some of the best professionals in the field. And I said, this is all disconnected. The financial planner should be talking to the doctor to the lawyer, and so on. And Divorce Dynasty was built. And Divorce Dynasty is a platform based on the Platinum American Express card, concierge services. So when a client comes into my office and I look at her and she tells me that she's a child with autism, she's never worked, whatever the circumstances may be, I connect her with the right people so that her journey is now built on success and not being afraid. And that's the platform. And now it's, obviously grown. I've launched in South Korea. I've launched in Poland. I had a presentation in London this fall. The bottom line is that divorce speaks many languages, but empowerment of women speaks one. And access to information and a support system, investing in yourself, education, no language. That's a global movement. So when I was invited to join the London group to talk about how I could make a difference in women globally, that was easy. It's providing them with the resources and education.
Wow. Well, first of all, I just want to backtrack because you shared so much in such a profound and humble way. But like even just the sentence, and then I went to law school, became partner in a law firm. Just that one sentence, let's say. Think of what went into that.
So much fear. I quit my job. I went into debt. I was, not 21 at the time. Obviously, this is my second career. I have a master's in counseling psychology. I was a VP of a nonprofit. I mean, I was the wife of a senator. I thought, life was grand. It's out of fear. And when you're your lowest moment, with the right backing, because my mother believed in me, I had a family that believed in me, that you find that little seed and then you water it. And I was able to water it because of the community that I had around me. And my goal right now my obligation right now is to give that back to women that are in that moment. And it's not just divorce. It could be a spouse dying. It could be a terrible car accident. It could be their company failing. We have an obligation as women to open doors and to break barriers.
I would love to speak about that word obligation because I feel like it's used very consciously. And I'd love to hear what for you makes it feel like that. Like why should we all have this as an obligation?
For me, it's an easy answer because I don't have children and I think about my legacy. And, my husband and I, when we were still married, we were thinking of starting a family. And then, of course, divorce happened. Then I went to law school and then here you are. So that leads my passion for the work with the Ukrainian Orphans that I'm doing, which we'll talk about. But you're here for such a short time on this earth, and you have to think about your legacy. You have to think about, now we're all Googleable. So what will people Google about Karolina Dehnhardep when I'm long gone? And I don't want it to be, well, she was a great divorce lawyer or she gave to charity. I want to make a difference. And the only way that I can do that is if I feel an obligation to help the next generation. I am very big on connecting young people with my Rolodex, opening doors. That's what happened for me. And I feel that we have to do that for other people. I feel that we are in such a world where if you don't do that, then you're becoming less than who you could have been. And then your journey and your struggles won't be heard. And for me, it's just a flow of energy and what life should be all about.
Absolutely. And this, I think, is something to invite all the viewers and listeners to think about is like, what is your legacy? Maybe some of us have that. Maybe some of us have never even considered that. Maybe it's not even been a question we've asked ourselves. So that's an amazing invitation, is to really reflect on that. And you're such a powerful example of that. You are a living embodiment, and you are constantly, giving back and serving in that way. And I'd love to touch on the Ukrainian Orphans project, because that's something that is so profound. So we're going to jump to that. But I first wanted to just dive in a little bit about what you're doing with Divorce Dynasty, because you mentioned a lot of women and the resources in the education.
Yes.
And I think this is really important because, a lot of times, and I think especially women, and forgive me for making a generalization, but we often give unconditionally. We give a lot of ourselves in relationships. And it's almost like we're wired to give so much and not think about the negative or what could happen when we're in love, because we just get blinded by love and we think, well, this is it. Yeah. This is it. This is everything. And we may not have the preparation financially, through our education, through our Rolodex, our contacts, because we're so reliant, or can be at times so reliant on our counterpart, because we love them, because we trust them, because we just vowed to share our lives together and whatever it may be. And so I'm curious, there's a few things. There's one thing that just came to me I'm curious about, which is, first, I'm curious, do you have any prevention programs or things that maybe someone is in a very happy, healthy relationship, but they're actually just like intrigued by what you're sharing and saying, maybe I should have like some kind of a plan just in case, for a protection. And the other is, what have you observed for the women that have gone through your services, and how does that impact them and benefit them versus not having it?
So the first question, we're sitting in New York City where the Twin Towers came crashing. And in my town and where I live near Westfield, a lot of those young, beautiful brides that just were happily married with little tiny babies at home kissed their husbands goodbye. And there was a company in the Twin Towers called Cantor Fitzgerald, and there were others. And these women were, blindly, madly in love. And maybe they had life insurance, maybe they didn't. But they weren't thinking about divorce. Obviously, they were just married, but they also weren't thinking about death. So it's not that it's always divorce. What if it's disability or death of your spouse, right? So my entire platform is based on prepare, protect, partner to prosper. Prepare to protect yourself, partner with the right people to prosper in whatever happens. And I have a talk that I do called Be the CEO of Your Own Life. And what it entails is taking a fireproof box with different categories of dividers, credit cards, bank statements, insurance, et cetera, and so forth. And can you fill that box? And if the answer is no, because you're relying on your spouse, then I don't care how happily married you are. God forbid 9/11 happens again, or there's an accident, he's disabled and in a coma. What will you do? The moment something bad happens is not the time to get your plan together. Okay? So the preventative aspect of Divorce Dynasty is to open up everyone's eyes to what can happen, and then help them be prepared with the right team in place. Do you have the right resources for your budget? Are you thinking of what could happen to your disabled children? Are you the second or third wife? Is there a will? What will happen if, God forbid, X, Y, and Z happens? So it's education through scenarios. And that is critical because, again, I get those phone calls with, this happened yesterday. Well, now we're playing triage. And when you're playing triage, you are not thinking clearly because you're now in panic, and you're going to spend a lot more money putting that team together than if you could be preventative. So, it's like women are vain, right? We try to stay as young for as long as we can. You're investing in that vitamin C. You're investing in all these things. Invest in your financial future, because just like your skin will get older, your life will pass you by. What will happen when something happens? So that's that answer. What I have seen is beyond transformational in my clients. I have had clients that have come into my office broken, gray, not because they're older, but just gray, no color, scared, asking things like, will I be able to see my kids? Imagine that question from a woman whose husband decided to leave her. What do you mean? I have seen women go from that to this, to sitting strong, to becoming CEOs of their own companies, to going back to school, to becoming entrepreneurs, but most importantly, to developing a relationship with themselves and their community. And I've watched this globally. So Divorce Dynasty, divorce is an ending. Divorce Dynasty is a building. It's a powerhouse. Think of the Chinese dynasties, right? And the two words coming together send the message of that when something really bad happens, it's a new opportunity for something really beautiful. Yes. And it's now my obligation and the professionals I work with globally to assist in that. And it's not one size fits all, to assist in that journey for people that go through loss.
Wow. It is so powerful. I'm like, as you're speaking, I feel the energy of the phoenix rising and just like turning this negative situation into this creation and taking it and empowering it, and you providing all of those services is creating a pathway, and it's just so powerful. And so now I want to jump into the projects you have with the orphans and everything with Ukraine. So do you want to share with us a little bit about that?
You know, it's really the most moving part of my life, and it will continue to be a part of my career till the last breath I take. So I have many clients that for whatever reason didn't have children and they got divorced or they couldn't. And when the war broke out, I had a lot of my clients calling saying, we're watching these kids, these orphans, you know, on CNN or Fox, no matter what your political affiliation was, getting evacuated. How can we help? How can we adopt? So being from Poland, working with clients in Poland, speaking Polish, I traveled to Poland right away. And I realized that there were tens of thousands of children that were evacuated from Ukraine to Poland, living in our orphanages, because Poland already has orphanages. We have an orphanage system. I met the kids. I came back. I put together a mission with senators, with rabbis, with entrepreneurs, civic leaders, business people, families to go and to visit these orphanages. We brought them coats and iPads and medicine, connected with hospitals, with the mission of helping them survive and have quality of life while they are displaced, but then to start the mission of having President Zelensky lift the adoption moratorium, which he put in place when the war broke out, and to allow American families that were already in the process of adopting finalize those adoptions. 3 years later, we just had a resolution passed in Washington through our work that sends a message to President Zelensky to lift the moratorium for those American families that we are working with. It's 200 families across America. And then second step, to lift the adoption moratorium in general. Now, some may say, why is there a moratorium? It makes sense.
Can you explain for anyone?
Yes, what that means is that halt, no more adoptions. And when you have a war break out, it's of course common for a president of a country to say, we're not letting children be adopted because there's sex trafficking and God only knows what else. There are pedophiles waiting at the border when Ukraine was being evacuated. We understood what he did, invoking something called martial law. However, 2-3 years later, when the children are still living in these orphanages, children we've met with, we work with, they're now 2-3 years older. When there's American families that were willing to adopt, especially those that were in the process, that's not okay. You don't function and develop into a regular child and an adult by living in a group setting. These kids are being cared for in Poland. I will not say they're not, but think about it. They're watching one laptop. I will never forget this. I was there recently. They're watching Home Alone, Macaulay Culkin. Think how old that movie is. On an old laptop, all lined up, 7-year-olds with their little slippers watching one little show and, you know, having their 3 meals a day. That's not what life should look like for children. So my entire effort has been to work with the U.S., Poland, and Ukraine to lift the moratorium, allow the adoptions to resume, and to now, when the war ends, hopefully soon, to continue the dialogue between the U.S. and Ukraine to make adoptions easier. Because even before the war, it was virtually impossible to adopt a child from Ukraine.
Wow.
How old you had to be. You had to be in a heterosexual marriage, married for so long. It was difficult. And I think that as a world, we have to respond to what happens when there's a war and as decades go on, and what should be the requirements now to adopt. And more so, and most importantly, why should the families that were already waiting for a last stamp to adopt the kids, they already knew, the kids are already here. Why are those adoptions not happening? So we're going back. We go back. I go back almost every 2 months. In the meantime, we send support and we work with foundations in Poland to help make these kids' lives better while they're there. But the ultimate goal is to provide them loving families.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so important. And, you know, it just kind of leads me to a bigger conversation, which I feel like this is an example of, which is how can we work together more around the world? Like cross borders, no matter what, it's like if you have a need and we have a solution and we can work together.
Yeah.
Well, it sounds simple.
I think, I think it is simple in the sense that you need vocal women. And the show is about catalysts for change, and we're talking about women's issues, but we welcome the men, obviously, to join any effort out there. I mean, I'm not trying to, stay sexist in any way, but it just takes a voice and consistency, right? So if somebody comes on your show or any show and has an idea, but then does nothing with it, it's empty words.
Yes.
We need to work with women that do this every day for decades, for their entire careers.
Yes.
That use their voice, their careers, their positions, their Rolodexes, and then change will happen. I'm watching what's happening with the orphans.
Yes.
I'm seeing that we have results. Those children will become prosperous individuals, whether they stay in Poland or get adopted or whatever may happen. I know that will happen. I'm watching it.
Yes.
I know that through Divorce Dynasty, I'm helping women reinvent themselves and to not give up. And through the work you're doing and whoever follows my interview, and Sharon, who's coming, my good friend, as long as we continue and if we share our projects and unite, it should be impossible for us to fail.
Absolutely. And I love that you brought this forward because this is so key. One of the things that Dr. Justina Mutale brought forward in her interview is she said there was some statistic, and it said of all the governments and all the leading parties in the world, that 7% were women. 7. So the conversation, a moment of silence for that. 1 digit. So that being said, imagine if we even just reached 50.
Right.
What? Imagine.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I'm hearing in what you're saying is anyone can make a huge difference in the world.
That's correct.
By taking that consistent action and by choosing something. That's the one thing I want to kind of encourage. I'm just feeling called to encourage people to do in hearing you shares, because I think sometimes people can get overwhelmed by everything that's happening in the world, by hearing these types of numbers and just seeing it and feel almost hopeless. Like, well, why even try? Because there's just so much and it's so hard and, there's so many challenges. But what I love so much about what you're bringing forward is it's like, choose a mission, choose a legacy, choose something and do that thing consistently. Dedicate your life to making that difference and imagine what can happen.
Oh, absolutely. The way that I look at it is you wake up in the morning and you have the same 24 hours that everybody else does, right? So if you are a mother of 3 and your time is limited and you have sick children or you're dealing with your own battles, obviously maybe you only have 10 minutes a day or 10 minutes a week. But give that 10 minutes because it's going to give you value. It's going to make you feel like you're contributing. And then whether your life feels mundane or you're overwhelmed, you're going to feel incredible that you're doing a little something for somebody else. It's a proven scientific theory that when we give to others, we feel better about ourselves. And most people, should think about that more. We live in a world of consumption, especially sitting here in Manhattan. I mean, you walk out the door and you see wealth on top of wealth on top of wealth, but then you also see people that are begging with cups still. And in this city, what we see is an ability to continue to bridge the gap. So as women globally, we should continue to look for opportunities. And certainly we've identified our efforts, our missions, but look for opportunities to bridge the gap. You don't know. Like some people might say, well, I don't have any money to do this. I can't travel. I can't do this. But you don't know who you know. You don't know who you know that you can connect with someone, and that could set the world on fire. So I believe that every single person has such tremendous value. It's just a matter of, will they take the 10 minutes a week to explore that?
Oh my goodness. I like what you just shared. It brought forward a memory where it's like, there were times where I didn't imagine I could do what I'm doing, like when looking back, it's like, I didn't imagine I could fly here, fly there, working in a nonprofit, doing an interview like someone like you of your stature. Like there are those moments and I look back and I say, oh my gosh, but we're sitting here and it's happening because of those moments. So there's of course so far to go, so much to do, but if you believe and if you take that action, like you said, make those connections. And you mentioned a few times in our conversation, community. And that I found really like the Rolodex and the community and the contacts, because that I'm very interested in, because I think also bringing up again women, because that's a topic of our conversation. Sometimes when we have a family or a marriage, we can actually isolate ourselves.
Very much so.
I see that a lot, you know, and it may be intentional. A lot of times it's not. It's just there's so much going on. Life gets so busy. You know, we can easily lose touch with friends, even family. We're so focused on the home. And next thing we know, it's like years go by. Yeah. It's like, who is your touch point other than the people in that home? Yeah. Yeah, and absolutely. So I'm curious about like your any insights on the community and the importance of that.
Well, one of the things that I see as trends in the women that I divorce, especially women that are, you know, between, let's say, you know, 40 and 55, they stop being relevant to themselves and to their circles. They become Mrs. So-and-so, mom to so-and-so. You know, my dog is this, my cat is that, my mother-in-law has dementia, I need to help her. And yes, they are stretched and they are busy, they are exhausted, and maybe they don't work because they have to be in the home and the husband makes enough money and, you know, they're running the kids all around to lacrosse games and everything else. I get it. But you were born without the husband and the kids, and you will die without the husband and the kids, right? So somewhere along the way, you have to remember that you need to stay relevant. And that could be you write poetry, or you don't donate to the soup kitchen, or you become a jogger, whatever it may be. Becoming or staying relevant ensures you don't lose your identity. And the only way you could do that is through some sense of community. Now, that could be community online. You're part of a global conversation and you Zoom in once a month, or you're really involved hands-on in your community. But if you lose sense of that and something bad happens, well, then where are you calling? It's very hard after 20 years of being in a marriage, let's say a divorce happens or somebody dies, where's your community then? And I think it's overwhelming for people to then say, okay, well, now I got to get involved. Who do I call? That's scary. Stay involved along the way in whatever that word means to you. For some people, it's a religious experience. They're part of the synagogue or their church. For others, it's, as I mentioned, it's a book club, you know, from Ireland that logs it. Whatever that may be, you have to find a way to remember who you are and stay relevant.
This and even what I'm hearing, what you're saying is like, create who you are. Yeah. You know, like if
or explore who you are.
Yeah. 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 Like, you know, because we can change and evolve and like, you know, do new things, try new things, get out there. It may have even been years. Maybe someone listening or watching this conversation is saying, oh my gosh, they're talking about me.
You know what I love the most lately that's on Facebook? I guess it's, you know, algorithm search, but Karolina Dehnhardep didn't start her career till she was like way into her 50s from what I recall, right? Wow, and then they give the other, like the guy that I think it was Kentucky Fried Chicken, or you know, there's other examples. It's never too late. I don't care if you do this, you know, 2 days before you die. Yes. And it doesn't have to be that you're going to start Google. Do something that gives you a purpose, right? And if you don't want to be in front of the mic or be a leader, then join a movement so that you think about your legacy and your contribution, because you matter. There's nobody out there like you, right? And speaking right to our audience, you are unique. This wasn't by accident. So remember that. And I think that the people that have the more bruising, the more scars, the more hiccups, you know, moving from a communist country as I did to come to America, learning a new language, life certainly wasn't easy. I don't think I'd be sitting here today if I didn't have all those lulls and really hard moments in my life. And I definitely feel this tremendous sense to speak to people and say, unless you have a terminal illness and you're on your deathbed, it's never too late. It's never too late.
Wow. I love this message. This is like, I think we all need to hear it. And it's something that is so important to remember throughout our whole life. Yeah. You know, and I would love to ask you, we have a final question that we ask everyone on the podcast. And, you've in many ways touched on it in certain ways, but I would love to hear it formally. So if you could be a catalyst of change for one thing in the world right now, what would that be?
It would be for people to have access to resources. And what makes me the most upset is that I have clients that simply come to me and say, I can't afford you. And I want to be able to, and I mentioned to you, we were off mic, that I'm forming a foundation that's going to spin off from Divorce Dynasty. I want women, and these are some women that are married to the wealthiest men, but they don't have access to money. I want women to have access to legal help if they need it, or any other help. And I want to continue to build those resources. So if somebody calls me and says, I need X, I want to be able to know how to help and to be able to call X in Germany or China or Spain. I want to be able to know those people such as yourself and Justina and whoever else, so that I can always say, I'll get back to you, but I'm going to help you. I want to be a resource.
Wow. I really want to just emphasize how profound this is, because I have to say, like, speaking about reels, and recently I watched this reel about women, because it was Women's Day, so all these reels of women. And the statistics about how recently women were able to get a bank account, own a home without a husband or a brother or a man signing off, or have property. Like, we're talking like less than 50 years.
Yeah.
Like
and
less than 100.
And
like,
we're very advanced where we live, in this country, obviously. But when we travel globally and listen to these stories, it's to me, it's mind blowing. Yeah. It's mind blowing that, and in Poland, I do divorce work with my colleagues in Poland. Even in Poland, there's still things that I shriek at. In South Korea, if you get divorced, the man automatically gets custody of the children. What's happening in our world? And these conversations at the UN are so important. But while that happens once a year, and those are the thinkers, those are the policy leaders, we have an obligation throughout the year to actually be boots on the ground, to, yes, speak about these things, but then when the mic goes off, what are we doing?
Yes.
Who are we connecting with?
Yes.
Right? So I'm the person with the baseball cap on. I go to the orphanage and I connect the orphans with the iPads they need. Yeah. So it's not just let's be philosophers about this. We have an obligation to get our hands dirty and to actually do the work.
Exactly. And I would love to touch on that, because what would you say to somebody who's like, I want to make a difference, I want to do the work? What do I do?
I mean, I like to say that I'm very Googleable. So if somebody just Googles my name, they will be able to, I advertise with my cell phone because, I travel and I'm all over the place. So if somebody just calls me, we have a quick intake, I will connect you with either how you could help directly or indirectly. I welcome anyone and everyone, whether you're a person looking to adopt a child, you're a hospital that wants to donate Band-Aids, you want to teach children this English as a second language, you want to donate clothing, or you want to be part of a larger conversation, all calls are welcomed. I work with many foundations around the world, and I simply think that the more people involved, the more outcome we're going to have.
Yes, absolutely.
And for those that would love to hear more about the foundation I'm forming, which is going to focus on helping women get retainers to retain attorneys. Imagine not being able to even hire a lawyer when you need help. That shouldn't be happening.
Yeah. And I think I want to mention one thing too, because I think a lot of people may not understand, if they're not having lived that life or been exposed to people who do live that life. But you said something really key. There's a lot of women in the world who may live a very affluent lifestyle, millions, billions of dollars, private jets, the whole 9 yards, whatever.
Yeah.
But they themselves may not have access to that cash flow.
And I deal with that all too often, not on the billionaire side, but certainly women that are married to millionaires. Either things are tied up in a trust or they have no access to money. And certainly they'll buy the Hermes bags and they're sitting in all the best hotels and they're traveling, even private planes. But when it comes to wanting out, they can't get out because they can't retain counsel. And that shouldn't be the case.
Yes, exactly.
That shouldn't be the case. But certainly runs the gamut. Then we have the women that just need the help because maybe there's not a lot of money. And they shouldn't stay. I mean, your life is this long. You shouldn't stay in a situation where you are less than. Certainly not if you're battered in any way, right? Yes. So we have a spectrum of women that need education, support, resources, and a roadmap.
Yes.
And that roadmap is different for you, for me, and three other women sitting in the room. But we need to be able to provide these women these resources, and we have an obligation to do what we can to help. We just do.
Yes. And you mentioned something that I also want to bring forward, which is recently in a global women's conference I was at, there was a speaker and she was speaking on domestic violence. She said she's worked with domestic violence cases for over 10 years. And she said of all the women, she identified two key things. She said first was self-confidence and self-worth. And the second was money and access to resources. And she said those were the key things. And you just mentioned that. And so I also wanted to emphasize that because I feel like this is really deep and it's so far beyond just getting an equal financial benefit from you know, like it's
even being in the ring.
Yeah.
I have a client that's been consulting with me for 3 years now. She's in her 70s. Think about this. This woman has lived married to an extremely wealthy, influential man in this part of our country, and she says, I wait for him to leave, and they live in a big house. I leave for him to leave the house when I hear him now rumbling in the kitchen so I could go down and make myself a cup of coffee. She has no access to anything other than a food shopping cart, or she wants to go buy shoes, okay? This woman essentially is a prisoner in her own life, and she's been psychologically broken down, financially controlled. Now, some may say, what does she have to complain about? She lives in a mansion. I'm talking about human dignity here. Right? We're talking about you are a human being. Sure, you live in a mansion, but if you are somebody's second, if you are less than in that life, then what is the quality of your life? And then there's women that absolutely have to beg to even buy milk for their kids.
Yeah.
So I don't want the audience to think that this is about women that are just complaining. No, this is about women that are struggling. And we have a global conversation to be had about how do we help them with that? And then how do we rebuild that? These are role models for their children. If we can help these women get out of these situations after the spouse died or is disabled or there's a divorce or any other horror, then little Sally, Jimmy, Bobby watching mommy, what's happening to those kids? It's a cycle.
Yes.
And this is why we have to continue having the conversation to give women the support they need. Why? Because as you said, 7% in the world. So we're not sitting here saying, oh, women. We're saying this because it's true.
Yes.
It's just a true statistic globally.
Yes, it is. And so what you're doing is so powerful. It is so needed. And I see it as like a absolute movement. I almost want to use the word revolution because it's something we truly need globally. And it's something that can bring so much hope and healing to the world. From families, the women, the children, so much can come from that. You know, there's so much ancient wisdom that talks about when you care for a woman, you actually nourish that whole community.
Yeah.
When you care for a child, you are investing in the future of the world. So the work that you're doing has such huge impact, literally beyond what we can even comprehend. So I just want to honor you and
thank you.
Appreciate you so much for everything that you do. And I know the viewers are so excited, and I know I am, to continue to be a part of your journey. And I want to encourage everyone to check out all the links in the description, to connect, to reach out. And is there anything else, any final words you want to leave everyone with?
Just to leave everybody with the concept of make every day count. Make sure that every single day that you have left on this earth, you do something that says to you, this is why I'm here. Don't take a day for granted.
Amazing. Yes. So powerful. I will take that as well. Take it in and make every day count. And we want to thank you so much for being here on Catalyst of Change. You are a powerhouse catalyst of change without a doubt. And very, honored to be with you and to also witness the change that you're creating in the world. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes, and thank you everyone for tuning in to Catalyst of Change. Click the links below and please share in the comments your experience of our conversation. Anything that came up for you, we would love to hear what resonated. And as always, continue being a catalyst of change in your life, community, and the world. We will see you in the next episode.